really saw that I learned so much in these two relationships. And I knew that anyone could have this level of happiness if we just got out of our own way and loved ourselves enough to allow other people to love us. And I think that's the biggest problem we have, is that we don't love ourselves enough, and we look to the outside for people to validate us.
Yep.
Of course, there's never enough of that.
Here with another edition of the most audacious podcast you'll find on the internet. This is the Audacious Living Podcast, and it continues to be my pleasure to be here and continue our ongoing goal of helping our listeners live their best audacious lives ever. This is episode 239 of the podcast, and it's great to have you join us as we welcome relationship and life coach Jeanell Greene for an insightful conversation on the keys to build a happy and healthy relationship. Her mission is to bring love and healing to the world, and it really is a beautiful mission that she's on, and I'm glad that she was here to share it. Like I said, a delightful conversation I think you'll all appreciate. So without any further ado, here's Jeanell Greene. Enjoy. Hey, Jeanell, thank you for joining me here today on the Audacious Living Podcast. It is such a pleasure to have you. Thank you for making the time like this.
I am happy to be here, and I'm excited to have this conversation with you, Audley.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I say always and often how appreciative I am of, individuals, taking the time and engage in these types of dialogues. I feel like I keep winning because the things that we talk about are just so enriching and fulfilling and opens up in terms of possibilities. And so thank you for engaging with me today, and your work specifically as a relationship coach and helping couples get to a better place. So essentially it makes sense because we're all about helping individuals get to that better place, live a more audacious, free, wonderful life. And whether you're doing it with your couples or individually, it all makes sense. So I'm glad that you're here. And and maybe kind of as a starting point, if you sort of maybe talk about the work you do, but how you landed where you did.
That's a really great question. Well, I'll start with who I am and where I am. My name is Jeanell. I am a relationship and life coach, as Ali said, and I'm really on a mission to bring love and healing to the world. Around my 40s, I felt like I got this message that what I was doing was not what I was meant to do.
Okay.
And so I quit my job, cold turkey, had no idea what the heck I was going to do. And I spent the next year of my life just really asking myself, if I could be reborn, if I had a clean slate, if I could live my dream life, what would that look like? Because up until then, I was making six figures. I was a sales executive. I won free trips to Rome and Bermuda, and I was, living the high life. It was great. And it got to a point, like a lot of people, where we're like, okay, what next? And also, you work so hard to get to the top of the mountain, and then you're like, okay, it's great for about 5 seconds. And then you're looking to conquer the next mountain. And so I knew that and I knew my mountain was going to be a very different kind of mountain, because I had fulfilled and succeeded in the business and the traditional success mountain. Right. And I remember sitting on the couch. It was about 3 months before my 40th birthday. And I was trying to decide, how did I want to celebrate this sort of midpoint of my life? And I decided that I wanted to go home to the Philippines and be with my extended family, because Filipinos, as you know, probably don't love to party. And so I decided that that's what I wanted to do. And then I just started to really think about, okay, like a lot of us at that time, we started to do a review of our life and what we've accomplished. And I imagined myself at the pearly gates of heaven.
Okay.
And St. Peter saying to me, Jeanell, let's look at your life. Let's do the life review. And what would I see there? And so that was kind of the moment where I realized that I wanted to do something where I could really be proud of what I had accomplished, and that my goal of leaving people better than how I found them would be fulfilled. And for me, so then it was, okay, well, what do I care about the most? What is something in the world that just seems so wrong, that I know I could make the difference in. And for me, having gone through divorce at a very young age as a Filipino Catholic was the moment in my life where, talking about being audacious, where I said no. I actually said no to everything that I had been brought up with and had to choose my own path and say, I love you guys. It's nothing against you,
Yeah.
but I got to do me and I got to be happy with me. And I got to find peace with the Lord
Yeah.
around this, but I got to do me. And so now I have a husband of 18 years who is my inspiration, my muse, my teacher. He's my best friend. He is my singing partner, my bandmate. To have that now and to have gotten on the other side of it, starting, from where I started, I really saw that I learned so much in these two relationships. And I knew that anyone could have this level of happiness
Yes.
if we just got out of our own way and loved ourselves enough to allow other people to love us. And I think that's the biggest problem we have, is that we don't love ourselves enough and we look to the outside for people to validate us.
Yeah.
Of course, there's never enough of that because it's never good enough.
Right.
And so we're constantly starving of love when we should be the ones to be able to fill our own bucket first and foremost. And then everything else is just icing on the cake. But I think a lot of us in the old school, in our sort of our age range, we were brought up in a very different way where we weren't really taught self-love and self-soothe, and that it's okay to have emotions. And so that's what I'm about, is I'm really out to teach people these basic skills that their parents never taught them. And a lot of my clients come from divorced families, so they're like, we don't even know what a healthy relationship looks like. How are we going to have this? And for me, at the end of the day, it's about the children. It's about, how do we stop this thing called generational trauma that we keep passing on to our children because we don't know any better.
Yes.
And so that's really, and I'm so excited to do the work that I do because I don't think anyone does it the way I do. And I'm able to do it in less than 90 days. And I do it with love and fun. I don't look at it as people are broken or there's something wrong with them. I just look at it as, hey, it's not your fault. You were never taught. We were never taught. And I'm here to teach you.
So it's amazing. And first off, I have to acknowledge the passion and energy for the work that you do. It shines through loud and clear, Jeanell, and I encourage you to maintain that, because I think at the end of the day, that's what people will resonate with. People understand that you care, and if someone, probably one of the most important things that you can do for someone that's coming for help is holding a space that's safe and it's caring and lets them know that you're there to help them. And that so I want to acknowledge that first and foremost, because that's so key. I love also your point around that we're our own keys to our own happiness. Like, our own happiness rests with us, and there's not some outside force that will come down and shine from the heavens to make us happy for the rest of our lives. It starts from within. I think if more of us recognize that and we're embracing of that, it'd be such a difference in the rest of the world, I believe.
100%. And I think there are certain values, for example, forgiveness, that we were never taught. I was doing a podcast with a woman, and I could tell by her questioning that her husband has cheated on her, and she was trying to figure out how to fix it. And we started to talk about forgiveness, and I asked her, I said, tell me, what does forgiveness mean to you? Like, what's your definition of forgiveness? Because she said, I'm trying to forgive him. And she said, this was so interesting. She said, I think what forgiveness is trying to forget that anything happened. Very interesting. And so I think that that's one of the missing pieces, that we don't actually understand what forgiveness actually is. For me, the way I grew up, I thought forgiveness was someone does something bad to you, and they have to come and say they're sorry, and then you got to decide if you're going to forgive them or no. But that's actually not what forgiveness is. And this is the problem, is that we have this thing called forgiveness, or letting go, contingent on the other person, on someone else outside of us, but we can't control how other people are. But for the rest of us, what forgiveness actually is an inside job. It is about us letting ourselves go of the prison that we put ourselves into. So forgiving ourselves for being hurt by that other person. I need to forgive myself for reacting the way I did. I need to forgive myself for saying that mean thing that I said when that person hurt me. Because it's not their behavior, it's actually what we tell ourselves and how we punish ourselves because of that person. So it's actually good news because we can actually free ourselves from it. So that's the work I've been doing with myself, is forgiving myself for going through divorce, for hurting this man. And it's an inside job. And I knew that, he might not, if I went to him and said, please forgive me, he may not say yes, but it doesn't matter because it's about me forgiving myself.
No, and I think that's a really important point. When I think the more we understand forgiveness, the more for example, like, guilt's a big part of that,
Guilt.
right? So we can stop feeling that guilt, or let go of that shame or the embarrassment or those other things that are that we have swirling inside of us. We can put ourselves on that path of forgiveness that you talked about, but it's important that we start with us first.
Yeah. And if we don't have self-love, there is no distinction forgiveness. And so it's a long road, but it's not a difficult, I should say it's not difficult. It's not complicated. I think we make it complicated. But for my clients who are ready to go, ready to wipe their minds clean and actually be open to thinking and behaving and, feeling a different way, we can do it in like 4 weeks, 6 weeks. It's amazing. We just have to get out of our own way. That's the problem. We have all these yeah buts. We let fear get in the way. We get pride, our ego, doubt, resignation, cynicism. We get all of that stuff get in the way. But when we're able to actually say, you know what? I'm so committed to this working that I will do whatever it takes. And I learned this from my mom and my dad.
Sure.
So, when I was 9, so growing up, I had the most amazing family. My parents were loving. They were the best role models. My mom is like, I am my mom's twin. I am my mom's her doppelganger. And so I say that in the most positive way because my mom is this amazing, badass lady who is just like, she wears the pants in the family. Let's just say that. But sure. She's the most loving Mother Teresa woman you'll ever meet. But anyway, when I was 9, despite my family or my parents having a really great relationship, my dad had an affair. And I'm the eldest of 3. And I remember finding out that day and my mom telling us that my dad was leaving. And she said, he doesn't love us anymore. And I don't know if she said that to, kind of jab at him, but that's what I heard. And so doing the work, I started doing the work when I was going through my divorce, and doing the work, I realized that I hadn't actually forgiven my dad, and I actually haven't forgiven myself for that 9-year-old who decided in that moment, watching her father leave that day, deciding that I must be unlovable because if my dad loved me, he would have stayed. And realizing, well, maybe I can't trust people because if, they hurt me. And then thirdly, everybody I love will leave me. And so I noticed, as I started to go through my life, through my 20s, I realized like the type of men that I was attracting were inside of this. And so they were men that cheated on me, men that treated me terribly, men that I couldn't bring home to mom and dad. And it was like, why is that? And so I knew doing the work that I was the common denominator. I knew it was something about me. I just didn't know what it was.
Right.
And so going back to my parents, so my dad cheated on my mom with my mom's best friend, and they had a baby, and he left. And I was 9, my sister was 6, my brother was only 3. And for 3 years, they were separated. And I remember my only memory in those 3 years is being at church.
Okay.
My mom just, whenever we'd go anywhere, we just go into church and we would just sit there. I just remember me and my brothers and sisters being totally bored and my mom on her knees praying. And so 3 years later, my dad would come back and he would come to my mom and say, I'm sick and I need someone to take care of me. My mom was a nurse, so it made sense. Sure. And she said yes. under two conditions. Number one, if you're here, you're here. You never go back there, you're here. And number two, we forgive and we forget.
Mm.
And for the next 13 years until my father passed away, she honored that. She never brought it up. They never talked about it. And even if my dad would start to feel guilty about it and start to want to like, I'm sorry her up, she was like, no, we already said we were putting this behind us. And we got to be the best family. My dad was the best dad. He started to go to church every day. And we just had an incredible 13 years. And yet, there was still so much trauma to deal with afterwards. So I can't even imagine people who didn't get that peace of mind, who didn't get that closure and what they're grappling with. And so I have so much empathy and understanding of what it's like to feel trapped in your own emotions and unable to step into who you know yourself to be, because you don't even know how to get from here to there. And so that's the work that I do.
Let's talk about the steps to getting that closure, Jeanell, because I think that's a really significant point from a healing standpoint. There are so many individuals who weren't as fortunate as you to have an opportunity to get closure on some of the issues that you had to deal with. You know, I'm sure we all encounter people who have gone through, who've carried these things from their childhood through their entire lives, and it's followed them to their adult world. And they become grown adults dealing with childlike issues still, right? Because they've just never addressed them.
Yeah.
What sort of steps can we take? And I'll say we, because it's all, we're all impacted, right? So I'm not I'm not immune to issues as well. What steps can we take to sort of get past these things?
Yeah. 3 or 4 things I would suggest. The first thing is we need to get aware. We need to actually feel the feelings. We need to know what is going on. And I think the problem is oftentimes is that we feel the emotion, but we can't put words to it. And so I think, first of all, we need to be able to put words to it. And then from the emotion, go, okay, what is the thought that is actually creating this emotion? And sometimes the emotion is conditioned from like you said, way back when, but sometimes it's like we can actually tap into it. It's like, oh, I don't feel safe. So that's one of mine, is I don't feel safe. I'm like, why don't I feel safe? I mean, I have a great home, I have my husband, like everything around me feels safe. So then it must be something that's actually not physically here right now. And so for me, I kind of just keep going back in the Rolodex, and not Rolodex, but the time machine, right? Okay, when was the first time I never felt safe? Oh, that was when my dad left. Okay, where else did I feel safe? Oh, that was when I got bullied. Okay, where else? So I just kind of dive. I think a lot of people, what they do is they try to resist it. They try to push it out. They try to sweep it under the rug. And so it becomes this sort of like boogeyman that follows them like a shadow, because they won't actually address what's there. And so I think that the first step is to address what's there, because if you can't feel it, you can't feel it. Right? And then the next step is to start to question it. Because as young people, we don't question, when we're 5, 6 years old, when our parents said the sky is green, we're like, oh, okay, the sky is green. We just believed whatever we were told. And then as adults, we continue to do that. And so I think one of the skills that we need to learn as adults is to start to actually question things. Well, is that right? Should I do it that way? Well, what if I don't agree with that? What if that wasn't true? Okay, my dad said I was ugly, but is that true? How do I know it's true? Well, what if it wasn't true, right? To just really start to unpack that. It's like almost putting I like to imagine like a security guard in front of our minds. We sometimes, without the security guard, we just let everything in. We believe everything people say. We take on everybody else's fears, everybody's beliefs, everyone's limiting, all their own limitations. But when we can start to question and go, well, do I believe that? Do I agree? Rather than just being a yes to everything. I have one client who, she was telling me her ex-husband spat in her face, and then later on wiped it off her face and said, "You are not even worth my spit." And she has been grappling with that feeling of unworthiness for like a decade. That one moment in time, which probably lasted, I don't know, 5, 10 seconds, has been embedded in her mind.
Yeah.
And so now she feels like she is completely unworthy. I'm like, well, who says?
Right.
And if
Right.
that happened to someone else, I'm sure you would be livid if you saw someone do that to someone else, because she's an advocate for people. I said, but you can't even advocate for yourself,
Right. 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 Right.
right? So
The stories we tell ourselves, Jeanell, and it's so funny because the same thing could happen to something else and be an entirely different story,
yeah,
right? And so,
yeah.
so I think it's really important to understand. I think people understand, when they're getting into storytelling mode, right?
Mhm,
And what's
mhm.
that story you're telling yourself? Because
Yeah,
if you're subscribing to it, right? You're subscribing it like you're subscribing to a YouTube channel, and you're soaking it all in, and you're accepting it. You need to understand that the hazards it potentially can have for you.
yeah. And I think that one of the problems we have, including myself, we sometimes think that our own belief is the truth,
Mm.
right? It's like, oh, I made up the story. Now I believe the story. Now the story is true. Well, is it?
Right.
And they think it's true because it happened 15 years ago. It's like,
Yes.
well, just because that happened 15 years ago doesn't mean that it's going to happen now. Or if you had the same conversation with your partner, that it would go the same way. But we get caught in fear, right? And the impact of that is we're not present. We're not present with the person in front of who they are in this moment. And
Mm.
again, it comes to self-love. Like, one of the beautiful things about me and my husband is we're so vulnerable with each other. We can just say what there is because, first of all, we have our own self-love, but also we maintain a very safe space between us because we know the integrity of the relationship depends on it.
Yeah. That's so awesome. I do some coaching as well. I do some men's coaching in relationships a little bit, and I put together a framework, if you will, for helping identify key aspects of relationships. And it's an acronym. It's BRAVE. B is for boundaries. R is for realness, so authenticity. A is for acceptance of the situation where you're at. V is for vulnerability, and E is for esteem, that self-love that you talked about. And as you sort of go through that model, again, I work specifically with men, because I feel I was first, obviously, as a man myself, I can connect to some of the issues that we face and understand the uniquenesses of the challenges that we have in our society. But I found every time I get engaged in conversations and dialogues, and it starts to be, well, she's not, or she's not. But when you bring it back to yourself, is really where I'm going with this. When you bring it back to you, and so in that brave framework, where do you show up, right? What is it that what is it that you're doing? How are you having an impact to showing that you're brave? And each and every time when my experience has been, each and every time, yeah, we get in those dialogues or discussions, like, oh, that's a different way of seeing things. I didn't. And so that
Mm.
awareness, that almost a breakthrough in some instances. And so I share that because really it really comes to go back and reinforce the point you made around starting with us as individuals and all that we do.
And it is difficult. I even catch myself sometimes. It's
Mhm.
so easy to look outside of ourselves
Right.
to look for the problem out there, because then we don't have to be responsible, right? And it's being responsible that is the most powerful piece of it. But if we don't have self-love, we don't have the capacity to actually hold on to that, to be able to hold on to that pain and not have it, what's the word? Have it not hinder us, like to be able to hold it
Mm.
and love it. Because I think when the more I have the saying, oddly, it goes like this: pain and suffering only exist when you resist what is so. So
Mm.
when we resist who we are, when we resist our life, when we resist the people in our life and how they are, when we resist how everything, our body is, our finances are, and when we get disempowered like that, it's so easy to be like, well, it was that client who didn't sign with me, or it's the
Right.
it's stock market, it's interest rates, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But when we can just be like, hey, you know what? It is what it is right now. My life is the way it is. It's, it's not the best, but it's mine. That's when we have power to actually do something about it. But when we have it that we don't actually have control, and it's not up to us, we just spend our entire life resisting, avoiding, judging, comparing, and we'd actually have no power. And so everyone, that I ask, what is it that you want in your life? I get two answers: happiness and peace.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is, peace is a great idea, and it's actually quite difficult. And it's more than just acceptance. The really underlying piece that people have a really hard time with is the letting go piece.
Yeah.
The letting go that there's a problem, the letting go that life should be some other way. That's the hard part, because as humans, we love to look for the problem.
It's easy,
right? It's so easy. But if we truly want peace, we actually have to let go that anything is wrong. And that's hard when you're like, but I have 200 reasons to say why it isn't. And so it's actually a major mind shift. And as someone who comes from a third world country where it's always about scarcity, it's so easy to be, there's not enough this and not enough that. Especially as a woman too, who's trying to build her own business, same thing. Right. So, talking about going back to, living an audacious life, we have to be willing to look outside of ourselves and say, well, why not me?
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
No, I think that's a great question, a great starting point. Why not me? And that force, and what I love about that is that answer can ripple and lead you down a wonderful path, right? So,
yeah,
I think it's fantastic. I want to go back on when you made the decision to work with couples. What made you land there?
Well, I first started to coach men.
Okay.
I love men. I've always worked with men because I was in sales, right? So I'm very comfortable with men. I understand men. I feel like my brain is quite masculine, like the way I think. Being in sales, I've always been very competitive. So, and my husband's a little bit more feminine, so we have a very great yin and yang.
Okay.
But why I decided to work with couples was I realized in working with just one person, because that's how I started it, was I don't actually have the whole story. And those two sides can be like black and white. And there have been times when they're telling me about the same situation, and I'm like, were you guys even in the same room?
Right.
It's so different. And I realized, like, I could coach someone on a situation, but if it's not even the situation and I'm coaching them on the symptom rather than the core issue, well, then we're just not actually going to get very far. Now, not to say I don't do that, but I just found that I can make such a bigger difference and serve people at a higher level when I can actually have both of them in the same room to, number one, realize that they actually want the same thing. And usually number two is that they're actually struggling with the same thing. So, I try to have them see that they're not so different and they're not on different pages. They just haven't been able to communicate in a way, and kind of the energy shift that's required to go from where you feel stuck and icky to this sort of new level that they want to get to. And they just don't have the skills. And so, and they don't have the guidance to have these conversations.
Right. So I read where you identified that you've helped save relationships on the brink of divorce or separation. That's I remember just kind of freezing actually when I saw that, because that's so impactful and so powerful. You think of all the emotion and all the feelings that are happening at that brink. So we all know what that brink feels like, and to know you're able to bring people back from that brink. It's amazing. Literally, when I saw it, I froze. I really did, because I can understand all that's going on. I mean, the short answer is, how'd you do it? Right? How do you do it?
Well, I'll tell you this, and I'm sure you can resonate with this. At the end of the day, what we really want is we want to feel heard. We want to feel seen.
Yep.
And we want to know that we're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really why I wanted to coach couples, because I've been there. Like you said, I've been there. I know what that's like. I know what it's like to lie beside someone and be like, ugh, like get away from me. You know, like why am I here? I know what that's like. And then I also know what it's like, that moment when you're like, holy crap, I have not been responsible for my life. Like that aha moment.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so what happened in my divorce was that, we had been arguing and fighting, and I really had it like I was the one who was the victim in the situation, right?
Okay.
And when I started to do the work and I got really responsible, I came to him afterwards and I said, listen, I am so sorry for being judgmental, for making you wrong, for everything. And I realized that you're great the way you are. Because I was trying to change him. I wanted him to be the kind of man I wanted him to be, right? And he just wasn't stepping up. And I said, you're great the way you are. It just doesn't work for me. So I just stopped making him wrong. I was like, you know what? You're great. It just doesn't work for me. This is what I want. I want apples and you're an orange. I don't know, right? And so we were actually here's the miraculous part. We were able to go to divorce courts together, to the law courts together. We signed the papers together. We went out for dinner afterwards. We talked, and then he drove me home. And before I got out of the car, I gave him a kiss on the cheek, and I left. And our divorce costed a total of $80. It wasn't messy at all. And he went on to I think he got married 2 more times, and I got to be with my hubby. And so it all worked out. But I tell you, had I not done the work, that would have been a very, very ugly divorce.
Mm. It's interesting. One of the things I was thinking through is there are points when the relationship or marriage can't be saved, and when you get to that point of knowing whether it to stay or go, that line isn't always clear, or is it? I don't know. I mean, maybe what's your insight on that?
Yeah, well, the first question I always get is, can we save our marriage? Is it possible? And my answer always is, well, what do you think? If you say it is, then it is. If you don't say it, then you don't say it. It doesn't matter what I do for you if you already decided that you're actually not going to do the work.
Exactly.
And so I'm very clear with people that what it takes to turn this thing around, like you actually have to be willing to let this go. And I'll ask them, are you actually committed to making this marriage work? Because what you've been doing is you've been, bopping your partner over the head with this thing called maybe infidelity, usually, right? Bopping your partner over their head with this thing every single moment of their life for the last 10 years, and you're wondering why things are terrible. You actually got to stop bopping them over the head, right? And are you willing to do that? Because sometimes we just want people to hurt, that for them to hurt as much as they hurt us. And so there's 2 parts of it, right? So we got to stop doing that. And then we got to stop doing that to ourselves, because that's what we're actually doing, is we're actually hurting ourselves.
Right.
And so they have to be willing to do that. And sometimes, again, going back to childhood, if we had been treated like that as children, it's really hard to actually stop that to ourselves. And so can I save a marriage? Absolutely. If they're unwilling, though, to be responsible and they just want to point fingers, I say, sorry, that's not my job. I'm a coach. I'm not a therapist. Right. You want to be better partners, better people, better parents, and you just want to know how, and you want to be accountable, I'm game. But if you just want to sit here and point fingers and talk about whose fault it was, who's wrong, who's bad, not my game. So that to me feels really, really powerful, because then I really get to do what I do best, right? Rather than trying to fit myself into other people's lives and trying to help them out. I know what I do really, really well. I work well with people who are ready to do the work, ready to step up, ready to be the person they know themselves to be. That's who I really work with.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to that, doing the work, and I love that, because that's universally applicable. Now, we're not just talking about, in marriages or relationships now. It could be doing the work for myself and how I want to move forward in the world. So I think that's awesome. So again, I want to commend you for the work that you have been doing, and the impact you've been making, because it's so key. And to know that the work that you're doing is now having an impact on turning entire families around. Because now we're talking about turning families around, and their children who now grow up to have families of their own, they have
Yes.
a model of what it
Yes.
looks like, right? But they
Exactly.
also know the other side, what it looks like, that it isn't positive. And to be able to see that shift from one side to the next and still have a wonderful, audacious life is just tremendous for children to see. So again, I can't speak enough of how much I love the work that you're doing and the impact that you're having on all levels. So thank you, Jeanell. I really mean that.
Thank you. I'm going to be honest with you. It's not
Mhm.
easy. It is
Right.
not easy to be with people in their darkest moments, in their ugliest moments,
Mm.
and for me, it's like I have to constantly give up making them wrong. I find myself like, I really want to be unbiased, but as I'm listening to them, I'm like, man, you guys are like 2 5-year-olds in the playground just throwing poop at each other right now. And just to be able to just send love and let them know
Yes.
everything's gonna, but also to check myself is really, really difficult. But I also remind myself that this love, this level of commitment to their bigness is something that I don't think exists a lot in the world.
Yes.
And if I were to just shut shop and say, you know what, I can't do this anymore, they have nowhere to go. And sure, there are other people out there, but I don't think there are people like me out there who bring love and experience and a proven achievement called being married for 18 years to the love of my life and having hot, sexy, everything that everybody wants. Like I
Sure.
have it. And I don't
Okay.
want to sound like I'm boasting, but I if someone were to ask me when I was 6 years old about my dream man, this man is that times 100. And
Mm.
it's not by accident. I really believe that I had a lot to do with
Yes.
him becoming the man that he has become.
Mhm. And
And I wanted
you've
to,
also done your own work too. Like there's an aspect, then you touched on it, but there's an active aspect of this, is that you did what was required to bring yourself to the point where you're able to be in a relationship where you have the love and the sex and all the wonderful things that it comes with it, because you've done your part. And I think it's really important for people not to minimize that, because you can talk, and we see this all the time, where, oh, I want this man, or I want this woman that does this, but what is that you are doing? What are you bringing to prepare yourself to receive the
yes,
thing that you want?
right.
And if you're not prepared
What
to do
work
the
are
work,
you doing to be the
exactly.
kind of partner that the
Yeah,
person that you want is going to actually be attracted to? Rather
exactly.
than putting the responsibility out there with them, like they need to be the certain way. Well, guess
That's
what?
true.
You can't control that. All you can control is yourself.
That is correct. And I think what's really, really important, and as much as the satisfaction that you have your relationship, I'm sure you have problems and challenges and struggles from time to time as well, but you manage and deal with it. So it's not like it's a perfect world, but because the two of you set the parameters of your relationship, that's what makes it work. And
Yeah.
so, but
Yeah.
again, it does go back to the work. It really, really does.
Yeah. And I think too, I was telling my client this the other day because they argue a lot. I shared with her, you know what? Sometimes we're in the middle of an argument and I can tell it's not going anywhere. And what I just do is I go over it and I just hug them. I just hug them and I say, I love you. And then we just stop the fight right there. We're like, you know what? Can we just stop? Because this is dumb. Right? Because some of our conversations are just really clearly not going anywhere. It doesn't actually matter. It's like the dishwasher or whatever, right? The recycling. And when I can see his face, shift from like hopelessness, like trapped, I'm like, what am I doing? This is stupid. And so I just go over, I hug him and I say, I love you. And he says, I love you back. And then we just let it go because we do not, again, it's not worth muddying up the
Yep.
love, the purity, and the safety of our marriage. And so it's about putting each other first rather than your own pride and your ego and trying to be right and dominate and win.
It's true. It's not about winning. I mean, here's the important thing to understand in a relationship. If one person wins, the other loses.
Yeah.
And what's that doing to your relationship when there's a loser there? Like, it's not a good feeling. That's like, do you feel good about that now? Right? Yeah, I won. I beat you. But then what's that? What did you risk to win? There's always a
Was the
risk.
cost. Yeah.
There is. There is. Oh,
Exactly.
Jeanell, this is awesome. Oh my goodness. This has been such a delightful conversation. I really, really thank you for, again, I've spoken glowing about the work that you do, but I do really appreciate it. And I appreciate you for being here. And for our listeners who wanted to catch up with you or work with you directly, where could we send them, Jeanell?
Yeah, absolutely. They can reach me at either my name, JeanellGreene.com, or at saveourmarriage.ca. And they can find me on LinkedIn and TikTok and Facebook and stuff. But before I go, can I share my biggest audacious moment with you?
A bajillion %, please do.
Okay. So,
Is that No, you tell your story. Is that little you though? Is that you in the purple coat
yes,
there?
that is little me.
I see the little cheeks there. I love it. I can see it.
Okay, so this is a picture of me and the Queen.
Okay.
When I was 5 or 6 years old,
Mm,
the Queen came to town, and we have a hospital nearby. It's actually University of British Columbia, UBC, because
yep.
you may have heard of it. And they were opening a wing at the hospital. My mom worked there. And so we got an invitation to go and see her as she was going to come and cut the ribbon.
Yep.
At this time, I just started dancing competitively. So, I knew how to curtsy and all these things. And I was so excited to hear she was coming because I'm like, oh, I know how to curtsy. I'm going to show her my curtsy. Anyway, so we were heading to the hospital,
Yep.
and we pass by a grocery store. And I say to my mom, Mom, we need flowers. I've seen the kids on TV. They give the Queen flowers. So I need to have flowers. And of course, my mom's like, yeah, right. You're not going to give these flowers. But she goes and gets the flowers. She gets the cheapest $2 daisies that she could find at the grocery store.
Okay. Okay.
Anyway, so we get there and they put up this yellow rope that all
Yep.
the people have to stand behind.
Yes.
Maybe an hour later, here she comes, and I can hear the roar, and I'm like, oh, she's coming, she's coming. Of course, everybody's screaming. Everybody's, throwing around their bouquets.
Yep.
And she stops, and and then anyway, she's starting to pass me, and I'm like, I can see her passing me. And I remember thinking to myself, but this is my only chance, right? This is my only chance. And she's about to leave my life forever. Like, what do I do? So I remember having this moment, and like my good girl in me said, Jeanell, stay put. Stay put. You don't want to get in trouble.
Yeah.
There's this other part of me like, Jeanell, this is your one chance.
Yes.
And so I bolted under the rope, ran after her. And she had, of course, this entourage of
Sure.
police,
Sure.
people, and everybody's chasing me. And she eventually turns around to see what the ruckus is. And she sees what's happening and she waves everybody off. And she comes back to me and she says to me, hello, dear. Are these flowers for me? And I said, yes, Your Majesty. And I went to curtsy, and someone got a photo. And I was actually in the newspaper the next morning
Oh.
with this. And when I heard that this podcast was about being audacious, I'm like, this was my first audacious moment of my life. And when people ask me, Jeanell, who is it that you want to become? I say, I want to get back to being that 5-year-old, the one that was fearless, the one that went after what she wanted, no matter what, even if she might have gotten arrested, and it paid off. And so when I deal with the voices inside of me that say, who do you think you are? I remember that little girl.
I mean, I can go on forever how wonderful that story is. It is wonderful. And I love the fact that you have that vision of where you want to be in terms of, that little girl, getting back to that, and that reminder. So it's so beautiful to have that reminder, because I truly believe that we all have inside of every single one of us. And what happens is life does life things and tears us down and weathers us and makes us tired, and attacks our self-doubt and uncertainty. That creeps in as well, and we start to wonder and doubt in our own selves, go, I don't know if I can. And it's actually interesting. That's why I my tattoo, I got live life audaciously, right? I put that on that because I wanted that reminder for myself of how I wanted to show up in the world. And so I've got my tattoo, and you've got your image of you and the Queen, and whatever it is that gets us to where we want to get to, it's important that we have it there nonetheless. And so thank you for sharing that story. It's a really awesome story. And again, I think it's a great depiction of really what we want to encourage here on this podcast. So thanks, Jeanell.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for letting me share that.
Yes. And keep up the great work. Thank you. And we'll catch up down the road.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
Back we are here on the podcast, and much thanks and appreciation goes out to Jeanell for being here and sharing such wonderful insights on the power of building healthy relationships. I definitely encourage listeners to reach out to her if you're interested in learning more about her work and the coaching that she does with couples. You can do so by visiting her website. We'll make sure those show notes contain that as well. So again, Jeanell, thank you so much for being here. What I really appreciated the time I had with Jeanell is just, if there's one thing I take from the chat we had, it'd have to be this. In life, we're going to encounter moments that shape us, sometimes leaving behind scars that linger in our hearts and minds. These wounds, whether from past relationships, childhood experiences, or personal struggles, can weigh heavily on our souls, affecting our ability to form healthy and fulfilling connections with others. However, by embracing self-love, forgiveness, and the art of letting go, we can pave the way for a brighter, more harmonious future in our relationships. At the core of all healthy relationships lies a deep, unwavering love for oneself. Self-love is not merely an indulgence in vanity, but rather a fundamental practice of recognizing our worth, embracing our strengths, and accepting our flaws with compassion. When we cultivate self-love, we build a strong foundation that allows us to set healthy boundaries, communicate our needs effectively, and approach relationships from a place of confidence and authenticity. Forgiveness is a profound act of liberation, freeing us from the chains of resentment and bitterness. It's not about condoning the hurtful actions of others or forgetting the pain we endured. Instead, forgiveness is a conscious choice to release the grip of past grievances and reclaim our power over our emotional well-being. By forgiving ourselves and others, we untangle ourselves from the past, creating space for new beginnings and nurturing the potential for deeper, more meaningful connections. The art of letting go is a transformative practice that allows us to release the burdens of the past and live more fully in the present. It involves relinquishing the urge to cling on to painful memories, outdated beliefs, and toxic patterns that no longer serve us. By letting go, we make room for growth, joy, and new experiences, enabling us to approach relationships with an open heart and an unclouded spirit. As we embark on the path of self-love, forgiveness, and letting go, we pave the way for healing and growth in our relationships. We become more attuned to our needs and desires, and we learn to honor the same in others. We approach conflict with empathy and understanding, and we cultivate space for vulnerability and intimacy. Through this journey, we attract healthier connections and contribute to the creation of nurturing, supportive, and authentic relationships. In conclusion, the pursuit of self-love, forgiveness, and the art of letting go is a profound testament to our resilience and capacity for growth. By embracing these transformative practices, we empower ourselves to transcend the wounds of the past and lay the groundwork for healthy, fulfilling relationships. As we continue to nurture our hearts and minds, may we find the courage to love ourselves unconditionally, the grace to forgive with compassion, and the wisdom to let go of which no longer serves us. In doing so, we unlock the door to a future impugned with love, joy, and enriching connections around us. We've sadly come to the end of another episode of the most audacious podcast the internet has to offer. And as always, I send my thanks and appreciation to all those lovers of Audacious and those who've supported the podcast. Some of you from day one. And I really say thank you and extend my appreciation. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.